Hey, good morning, everyone. Sal Sophia here this morning, Friday, October 13th, another edition of a book study group meeting. Sitting here along with Lowell Caro from Las Vegas, Nevada. Good morning.
Morning.
And we are continuing our endeavor to break apart this book, mapping out the millionaire mystery, stepping into the secrets of the wealthy. The book is written by co-authors Brent Kesler and Chris Naugle. Chris Naugle is a money mentor over at the Money Multiplier, a team that I work with as well. He comes from an entrepreneur background, been on HGTV, one of their leading shows, he and his wife. Also, he was a owner of a snowboarding store and produced some merchandise there. So he has, a really strong background in entrepreneurship and money, and he's bringing a lot of his information into this book. Brent Kesler is a former chiropractor and had 16 different chiropractic locations across the Kansas City area, sold those chiropractic uh, practices, and then wound up in, even though he sold them, he was almost $1 million in debt, $900,000 in change in debt. And then by practicing what's called infinite banking or banking on yourself, and there's a multitude of different phrases and terms, becoming your own bank, so to speak, he was able to get out of that kind of debt in a little more than 3 years. Now, this is not any MLM system. This is not any get rich quick system. This is really one of the ways in which the wealthy Americans have always prepared themselves for protecting themselves financially, but also how to reuse their money over and over again. And so, what we do every week is we get together and we read the book together. My cadence might be a little bit different than yours in reading. So I apologize for that, but I'm going to read, and periodically maybe Lowell, who's with us this morning, might want to inject something. And Lowell, you could just say, raise your hand or something. I'll be able to see you. So this is section 2, the mysteries. If you do not have the book, I guess one of the things I could do is put that link in a chat, which I didn't do. Um, I don't think, Lowell, you'll be able to do it, but if anybody was to want the book, they could reach me on Workplace through EXP, or find me on LinkedIn, or just Google me. You'll be able to find me and then reach out to me, and I'll be happy to forward a copy of this book to you. So let's get going, probably for about 40 minutes or so, and we'll take it paragraph by paragraph. So this is the mystery section 2. Until you understand the truth of how banks work, you cannot begin to think like them and implement the strategies that lead you to live like the wealthy. So when you think of millionaires, you often think of who they are today without questioning how they got to where they are. Most people can't think of what came before Disneyland and Disney World, or how they came to be. It's easy to assume that things came easily to Walt Disney and the money just flowed. It takes a lot of money to make these dreams come true. From the very start, it was a problem getting the money to open Disneyland. About $17 million it took. And we had everything mortgaged, including my personal insurance, says Walt Disney. Now, there's an important lesson to be revealed when we dive into the rich history that belongs to Walt Disney and his empire, an empire that wasn't always so magical. Disney began his career with the Kansas City Film Ad Company in Missouri in 1920. In 1922, he and his friend, animator, now this is some name, Ub Iwerks, founded the Laugh-O-Gram studio in Kansas City and began producing cartoons based on fables and fairy tales. Now, Disney started his movie company with only $750 in funding. Seeking a business loan, he visited conventional banks. Unsurprisingly, he was turned down and was forced to look elsewhere for funding, or face the dreaded reality of giving up on his dream. In 1953, he realized he needed a creative solution and started thinking outside the box. He discovered he could take a loan from his life insurance policy with New York Life to get the funds he needed to start his company. His little movie company eventually blossomed into what is better known as Disneyland and Disney World, and the Walt Disney Company now has annual revenues in excess of 59 billion. Please don't hold us to that number today. Walt Disney isn't the only famous person to implement the 200-year-old concept of using whole life insurance to fund debt and expenses and generate wealth. Joe Biden, Ray Kroc, obviously the McDonald's founder, and Leland Stanford, Stanford University, are just a few more individuals who saw a prosperous future by using the money multiplier method and infinite banking concept strategies. Let me just stop there for a second and explain the money multiplier method and what that's meant when we're using those terms. The money multiplier method is simply a term that's used that was struck by Brent Kesler, forming his company, the Money Multiplier. The Money Multiplier is really an agency, an insurance agency, which promotes the sale of insurance products that are used to perform infinite banking concept strategies. Whether we call it the money multiplier method or it's known by another name, the concept is the same. There is some differences between agencies and how they operate after a sale is made. When they say sale, I mean the purchase of a product or an insurance product such as whole life insurance. The wealthiest families of our era, the Rothschilds, Morgan Stanleys, Barclays, and Rockefellers, all implemented similar strategies to create their wealth. Notice most of those names there are banks, right, today. There are the same strategies that Brent used to get rid of nearly $1 million in third-party consumer debt in just over 3 years. They all used what's known as infinite banking and understood how money and banking really work. Why do the rich seem to get richer without having to work any harder? Robert Kiyosaki speaks to 2 reasons why so many among us are suffering and failing to step into the secrets that allow us to live like the wealthy. Millions of people are poor or struggle financially simply because they use poor or incorrect words. Millions of people struggle financially because they refer to their liabilities as assets. Robert says it's possible that the 2 most important words in the world of money are cash and flow. Cash flow determines whether something is an asset or a liability. If you understand the meaning of the words cash flow, asset, and liability, your chances for a richer life are greatly improved. The reason most people struggle financially is because they have lots of cash flowing out and very little flowing in. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money from your pocket, he says, as he explains that cash flow distinguishes assets from liabilities. He also states that our wealth is based on cash flow, not net worth. A brief pause. I've been in the financial planning business, still am today, 35 years, proud of the work that I've done. Sometimes it seems I haven't really made a dent, except when I am more intimate with some of those families that I've helped over the years. I do see that some of my message got through to them, and it's not mine. It's just simply borrowed education that I've taken through the years. But it still amazes me that people don't even understand what net worth really means, assets minus liabilities. And it seems like a gray area for most people. Lowell, anything you'd like to add at this point?
Nope, just soaking it in. It's good information.
We're going to focus on both of the sources of struggle that Kiyosaki mentions as we show you how banks really work and the strategies that they can teach you. The discussion is centered around understanding what creates cash flow. In order to become the bank, you need to think like the bank and use the right words and focus on cash flow. So how do banks really work? Say you have $100,000. what do you do with your money? Well, you take it and deposit it into the bank. For example, purposes, say that you've found a really, really good bank that pays you 4% interest. When you put your money into the bank, that money becomes a liability to the bank because they owe you interest. Remember that anything that depletes cash flow is a liability. The bank then takes your money and turns it into an asset by loaning it out to others. Now, loans are assets to banks because they make banks money. They create cash flow. So in this, the way they're explaining it, loans are actually good, right? Banks are in the money business, the lending business. The money you put into your bank account gets loaned back to you or out to someone else to buy a house, a car, etc. The banks bring money in and move it out continuously, keeping the money in motion. And they do so in a way that is favorable to them from a cash flow perspective. If you are earning that aforementioned 4% on the money in your account and your bank is loaning out that money to you, back to you, or someone else at an interest rate of 7%, you or that someone else are expected to pay the back the full amount of the loan, plus the 7% interest. The bank is in full control of the transaction and benefits through the creation of the loan, the asset. Regardless of what you want to borrow money for, whether it's a car, house remodeling, a new deck, swimming pool, a boat, you are expected to pay back the loan plus interest. Therefore, if you take a loan at 8% to buy a car, you have to pay back the full amount of the loan plus the 8% interest. If you want to get a home equity line, borrowing money from the bank at, say, 9%, you pay back the amount of your loan plus the 9% interest. If you want to take out a debt consolidation loan at, let's say, 12% and use it to pay off all your credit cards, you pay off all your credit cards, and then a loan has to be paid back to the bank plus the 12% interest. Money is always going back into the banking system, and the bank is in control as they are continuously moving money in and out. And here's just a diagram that shows how the bank is at the central point here, call it the hub of every financial relationship that occurs. So you can go around the dial and you could see that the needs in our lives require money to flow in and to flow out. And we need to process that through the banking system, which personally I call the matrix, because it's really seems to be the only way we've been brought into this world, is to operate within this system. One of the things I'll add is, many years ago, I remember speaking to clients and telling them, look, why are you working with a bank? You don't need to necessarily for all the things that you're trying to accomplish. And I came up with a little acronym, which is BANK, banks are not kind. So once you learn more about this, I think you may come to agree. So what if we told you that through this process, the process you see right here, right, where you have a 7% interest that you pay for your home, 8% interest on a car loan, 9% for a remodel loan, and so on and so on. Well, what if we told you that through that process, the bank made 500% more than you did with the 4% interest you were earning on the money you have placed in the bank account? So let's read that again. What if we told you that through this process, now this process is this banking process that we live our lives through, the bank made 500% more than you did with the 4% interest they paid you or you were earning on the money that you placed in the bank account? So let's look at the math. If you are earning 4% and the bank is lending it out to you or someone else as a home buyer at 7, the bank is making what? 3% more. 3% is known as a spread. If you are earning 4% and the bank is lending it out to you or someone else to buy a car at 8%, the bank is making 4% more. Are they not? If you are earning 4% and the bank is lending it out to you or someone else to do a home remodel at 9, the bank is making 5% more. If you are earning 4% and the bank is lending it out to you or someone else to consolidate debt at 12%, the bank is making 8% more. So let's do some simple math, right? So what we have is 3% plus 4% plus 5% plus 8 equals 20%. So that's 20% more than you. But there's more to the equation. If you make $4 on every $100 and the bank makes $20, they actually make how many times more? They make 5 times more. So what we really need to see here is that we have to look beyond just simple numbers and look at the relationship that is in comparison to the total return on their money. And so they are making 5 times more than you are, or 5 times is 500%, isn't it? 100% is equal, so that's 1. So obviously 500% is 5 times more. So I guess the question is at this point, are there ways for us to earn much more than we are earning by keeping money elsewhere, sitting in a bank that's making these kinds of returns? And that's what this book and that's what this concept seeks and sets out to do, is show us how we can do that. On almost any downtown corner of every bank, large and small, you're bound to see a bank, right? Their buildings are typically the nicest buildings in town. By putting money into your bank accounts and taking out bank loans, you're paying for those buildings. Now, it's not that you're paying for them. Granted, I'm paying for them too and have my entire life, right? I think all of us have contributed to these beautiful buildings that when we walk in today, there's no one there to really help us. That's another sad state. Think about the profit there by not having to employ anyone. Anyway, the bank is in control of your money, and they are taking very little risk in using your money to loan out to others. To further protect themselves, the higher risk you are, the higher the interest rate you're going to have to pay. And if you are too high a risk, the bank simply won't lend to you. Have you ever found that to be the case, or knew of a situation where someone was in a very poor credit score, or they needed money and they didn't have collateral, or they didn't have an income to support a bank lending to them? Banks are making between 400% and 1,300% on the money you put in and leave there each and every year. Think about that. They're making 400 to 1,300. The annual reports of banks will show you how much they're making on the money you have. Rarely, if ever, has this number ever been below 400%. Now, you could go to Bauer Financial. I think it's Bauer.com or BauerFinancial.com. It's a website, BAUER, where you can actually look up every bank that's chartered, and you could see the profits that they earn and the interests that they earn on their portfolios and on their holdings, and you'll see it to be true. So this is not false information. That's why banking is a phenomenal business to be in. The power of decreasing balance. Okay, when Chris Naugle, who's the co-author of this book that we're going through, got his first new car, a Chevy S10 ZR2 pickup, he was in his late teens and running his Fat Man board shop stores. Leasing that car was his biggest accomplishment at the time, a time when he worked tremendously hard for every dollar that went into his little black box. His payment was $175 a month, the equivalent of what he paid himself each week as a teenage CEO in the late 1990s. Even though he had all these clothing stores, Chris was still living at home with his mom. It was hard for him to get ahead when the car company controlled his lease payments, much like it is for any of us who have the bank controlling our loan repayments and interest payments. What happens when you finance a car or other purchase? Infinite banking concept founder R. Nelson Nash puts it very simply. One, you pay interest to another party, or two, you give up interest you could have earned. Now, I don't know if you could see this book. I'm holding it up. This is
Yep.
R. Nelson Nash's Becoming Your Own Banker, 5th edition. I go way back with the studies of R. Nelson Nash. I actually still have the first edition 30 years ago. Pick up the book. You could find it on Amazon. You could reach out to me if you cannot find it, but it's on Amazon. And read through it. And I think you're going to find it the Bible, so to speak, on infinite banking. So what more? He says you finance everything you buy. You either pay interest to someone else or you give up interest you could have earned elsewhere. There are no exceptions. The latter is called opportunity cost, money that you could have potentially earned interest on. The solution is to create a process, a system that you own and control the environment, one in which you make money on your loans. We call this process the money multiplier method, or infinite banking, or bank on yourself, or your family bank, or use whatever terms you would like. You can even create one for yourself if you like. But the way it's used is through specifically designed whole life insurance policies as the banking system. Now, I'll take a moment here. Feel free to break in and speak about this subject if you wish. But when I entered the insurance industry back in 1988, there was only one type of whole life policy that there were several types. They were hybrid type plans and so on. And we did talk about infinite banking. We didn't call it infinite banking at that time, but we talked about how to put your money away for yourself and pay yourself first. And by working with many families through the years, I learned that that was one of the most difficult things to get people to do, was to discipline themselves. And it's in that discipline where the creation of wealth and accumulation and protection and financial freedom does fall into place. Now, whole life policies back in the day, and I'll just say this, when I entered the industry, I didn't know anything about whole life insurance policies or life insurance policies or the banking system. I worked for someone else, right? I worked for the man. I worked for corporations, right? And so, I collected a paycheck and I was covered with insurance through the company, so to speak. When I entered the business, though, I was amazed how there was a wide gap between those families that never heard of whole life insurance policies or never had it in their family. And I had to go sit with them, obviously, to help them to protect their estate, protect their family, protect their income. And, it was foreign to them. It was foreign to them. Now, on the other hand, I would go into homes and those families were craving for more. In fact, they would tell me stories about how they were influenced from their parents and their grandparents way back. They were brought up in understanding how important it was to have these types of plans in place, specifically whole life insurance. And so it was pretty simple, actually. They would tell me, oh, no, you don't have to go through all of that. I totally get it. Oh, no, no, if it wasn't for my father's policy, I wouldn't have had my first car, and we wouldn't have been able to buy the property that we have now. And, oh no, they've had it on me when I was a child at 10 years old. And we transferred that money out of that, and it was given to me for my wedding. And it was like eye-opening for me. Can anyone out there relate to that? Has anyone had that experience in their life? So I did not, just so you know, right? I came from a poor family. We didn't know of any of these things. Now, even for those of you who are good with money and pay cash for your cars, you are not outside of having to make payments. By paying cash for your car, think about this, you're simply making one large payment up front versus making monthly payments over several years. Paying cash for your car also does not keep you from paying interest. Now, somebody might say, how's that possible? If I pay cash for my car, of course I'm not, I'm not paying any interest. What do you mean? Well, there is still an opportunity cost involved here. The $25,000 you paid for the car goes to the dealer as money. And that's a means of exchange, because that's really what money is, a means of exchange. So you have given up the interest you could have earned on that 25,000 if it were in your bank, or if you were able to take that 25,000 and have a certain or assured investment with it. Would you not? You will definitely be able to earn money on that $25,000, which would be an asset. So you want to buy a car for 25,000. Let's assume that this is precisely the amount you have right now in your bank account. The one that we talked about in the last example, that's paying you a generous 4% interest. You ask to take the 25,000 of your money from the bank to pay cash for your car. But instead, your banker uses your account as collateral and gives you a 6% loan for the 25,000. And so you go along with it. Okay? Any question about that? I'd like to repeat that. You ask to take 25,000 of your money. So what does that mean? What does that mean? How do you ask to take 25,000 of your money when it's sitting at the bank? I mean, I guess you have to go to them and you have to find a way to withdraw the money, right, as a request somehow. Today, through technology, you just do it online, but you're still, if it's not done properly, they're not going to give it to you. You have to request it and ask for it. Based on what we taught you about how banks work, you now know that the bank will make more on the 6% interest from the loan they gave you than you will on your 4% interest-bearing bank account. You learned that earlier. So what if we also told you that your banker actually did right by you by wanting to give you a 6% loan rather than have you take out the $25,000 in cash from your 4% interest-bearing account? And this is where some people, it can get a little foggy. What if I'll repeat it, told you that your banker actually did right by you by wanting to give you a 6% loan rather than have you take out the 25,000 in cash from your 4% interest-bearing account? Well, what that means is that banker is saying, don't liquidate your money, don't liquidate your account or reduce your account value, leverage it, right? Leverage it, and keep your money there and get a 4% or get a 6% loan. So, and that's true. So it's pretty basic, but let's look at the math. Your loan costs you $28,999 over 60 months. It's a $25,000 loan plus the 6% interest. In the meantime, the 25,000 you had in the 4% bank account has grown to 30,525 over the same 60-month period. So here's a diagram. The $25,000 paying 6% for 60 months, monthly payment, and the future value understand that in car loans or any similar types of credit, it is based on a depreciating scale. So actually, the value does get reduced over time. But when your 25,000 is earning 4% for 60 months, you will have $30,000, 525, in your account. So the math tells us you've made a profit of $1,526. And people sometimes have to continue to look at this in a spreadsheet or, conceptualize it differently. But understand what we're talking about is collateralization, really, and borrowing money in your favor rather than reducing your account and losing the interest that will accumulate. Plus, it makes more sense to not give up your money, right? Because if there was a major catastrophe and you needed to come up with money, you wouldn't have it if you gave up that $25,000. And maybe that's what's going to be explained next. The reason you were better off taking the $25,000 loan at 6% and leaving your money in the bank is because the interest charged on the money the bank loaned you is simple interest, paid on a decreasing balance. You're paying back the $25,000 loan over time, therefore decreasing the balance upon which interest is charged. The interest on your bank account is on an increasing balance, which means you are earning uninterrupted compound interest, which is increasing the balance in your account. Our minds are not programmed to think that we can make money by paying 6% simple interest while earning only 4% compound interest. We're not, we're not trained that way. We think that if we borrow at 6 and earn 4, we're not making money. But that's not how money works. You can make money all day long by paying 6% and earning 4% when you're using the money multiplier method or any method of self-banking. Regarding loans, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York says that there were over 1 million more troubled borrowers at the end of 2018 than there were in 2010. Times have changed, but our need for a new strategy is not. The way that we think about money needs to change. Too often, we also get hung up on the interest rate, the rate of interest we're paying, without giving due attention to the amount of interest we are paying. For instance, look at your mortgage statement within the first 7 years of your 30-year mortgage. It's likely that there is over 80% or more of your total house payment going toward interest. The average person stays in the house for 5 to 7 years before he or she resells or refinances to attain a better interest rate and term. If you have a mortgage and it's at 5% interest rate, and your mortgage payment remains the same each month, the interest you are paying is always going to be much more than 5, because you're not able to maximize the power of a decreasing balance with 80% of your house payment going to interest in the first 7 years. The principal amount is not being paid down much in the early years. For those of you who have been in your home for over 20 years, you may have refinanced a few times. Say you have refinanced your home twice. That makes for a total of 3 transactions of buying and refinancing. It's not the rate of interest that is killing us. It's the volume of interest we are paying. We talk about how high of a rate of return interest we can get on our savings held by the banks while continuing to pay out roughly 34.5 cents on every disposable dollar as interest. We are trying to get you to think about what is really going on with your money. Banks are very smart. When you start to think more like them, you move beyond the habits of the average American household and step into the secrets of the wealthy. Now, compounding is often misunderstood. Do you believe in compound interest? The only way compound interest works is if your money is sitting still, remaining in the same place. If you move your money from the bank, it no longer earns compound interest. Motion is a natural law of the universe. You wouldn't want to eat a fish you caught outside of a stagnant pond, would you? When we think of one business that uses compound interest, the most common answer is banks. In all actuality, banks do not use compound interest themselves. They pay you compound interest and charge you compound interest, though they do not use compound interest themselves. Say you make a large mark with a yellow highlighter on a $20 bill, initial it, take it down to the bank. If you return to the bank in a month to retrieve that same $20 bill, will you not get it back? The bank has not kept your money in a special little black box for you. You will not ever be able to retrieve that particular $20 bill, not in a day, not in a week, not in a month. Why? Because, as we mentioned earlier, banks earn the business of lending money, and because of this, they keep their money in motion. No real businesses in the world actually have money sitting still to build compound interest. If a car dealer doesn't move cars, they don't make money. If a grocery store doesn't move the products off their shelves, they don't make money. All the institutions that promote compound interest, banks, Wall Street, mutual funds, and insurance companies, tell us to park our money with them, but they don't park the money themselves. They keep it in motion, using it to earn interest as cash flow for themselves. In the financial world, we continually hear about good compound interest, how good compound interest is. If this is the case, why aren't these larger institutions using it? Well, it all comes down to how we use uninterrupted compound interest to create our wealth. In his book, Money, Master the Game, Tony Robbins speaks of his interview with Burton Malkiel, the man behind the index funds. When Robbins asked him, what's the biggest misstep most of us make right from the start? He said the majority of investors fail to take full advantage of the incredible power of compounding, the multiplying power of growth times growth. The money you put into your whole life insurance policy, assuming you have one, is put to work by the insurance company. So they are ensuring the compounding benefits on the growth of your policy value. At the same time, you get to act much like the banks and keep your money in motion by taking out loans from the general fund of the insurance company. More on that in the next chapter. In the upcoming chapters, we're going to show you how to pay off debt and recapture the interest you are paying to everyone else, including how to get back all of your money for every car you will ever buy, drive, and own, because today, starting now, everything changes. Today, you become the bank. Today, you pay yourself first. The solution to breaking free from the bonds of financial slavery and living like the wealthy is that simple. And so we'll break for today. We'll resume next Friday. That's October 20th, noon Eastern time. There are people that I've come across, and Lowell, maybe you have also, especially today, a lot of people aren't looking to become wealthy. To them, if they hit the lotto, or even if I hit it like big, like $1 billion, I mean, would that improve my life necessarily? It's debatable. For most people who come into big money, it causes more damage than it does good. We could talk about some of the situations where people have. You probably have seen TV shows where they were interviewed where they lost everything. So for most people, it's more about relief, freedom, flexibility, options, right? Those are some of the words that come to mind. Again, the health of a person simply cannot be bought by money. I've seen that. I've come across families who, no matter how much money they had, it doesn't solve their health problem. Anything to share on that?
Um, yeah, I think it takes us back to, you said if you won the lotto and somebody actually just won the $1.7 billion Powerball or whatever it was, just yesterday in California. But um, it's money comes and goes, and we have to learn that money comes and goes, and we have to learn how to keep more of the money that comes through our lives. And that's what this is really about. Looking back on this, I've counseled younger adults when I was in the military on finances and how to keep their finances straight, and with very basic stuff. But this one of the things I tried to teach was very simple. Use a credit union instead of a bank.
Mhm.
You know, a credit union, you get paid the same compounding interest as you do at a bank, but at a credit union, you also get paid dividends. So when you want to get paid a little bit more, if nothing else, and I actually purchased a car years ago through a credit union with a deposit of my own, and I borrowed against that deposit to buy a car cash and paid myself back. At that time, I didn't know I was using the infinite banking system, or, it just made sense at the time because at the end of paying that loan back, I still had my money in the bank. Um,
Mm.
since then, I've done things far stupider. you know, um,
Amen. I
I
know.
didn't, I didn't, I didn't take that as a lesson. I took that as a, hey, look what I can do. And, I didn't apply it. I think back, if I would have applied that, I mean, that was probably more than 20 years ago that I did that. If I would have applied that across my whole financial world, it would have made a huge difference in my life. But yeah, I mean, it takes time to learn these things and takes time for them to soak in.
Yeah, I could understand totally why you didn't continue, and neither did I. I fall in and out of it. This is a
Hmm.
practice. This is a practice.
Yes.
This is not, you know, turn the switch on and my
And
life is
fix
going
it
to
today
change.
and it's good. Yep.
No, it isn't. It's a practice, and it requires mentorship, and it requires bouncing these situations that we face in life off of others who have successfully maneuvered through it using these kinds of concepts. Uh, and one of the reasons why I think that this is not really used and known as to the extent it is and should be is because of the forces against us, which is the banking system. Like turn on the television, radio. I mean, all you see is
Yeah.
or companies trying to lend to you, right? In the mail, that's
Yeah.
all you get. I mean, so we're conditioned to accept those ways to do our business and live our lives through that
Right.
mechanism. And the power, and it's like a powerful, wave that just overwhelms us. So we can't get to the top of that water and successfully swim to shore because it's very difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you have to break free of that tide. And it's really not that difficult once you start. You need to start. You need to take the first step. So with that, for those people listening, watching, who have never, looked at, let's call it a whole life insurance policy. Ooh, some people would say, well, I don't understand what the word policy means. Like, what is a policy versus what is a bank account? Like, why would I want to put money into a policy when I could put money in a bank account and I know I have an account that has an account number,
You're
right?
putting money into an asset.
You're putting money into, you're putting money into, call it a bank account of your own nature
Hmm.
because it's got your name as owner on it. In a bank, you don't have ownership of that. Once you turn that money over to your checking account or savings account, yeah, you have all you I guess you can call
You
it.
have a promissory note
You have a
more than anything
promissory
else.
note. Yes, you do. But that
Yeah.
money could be washed
Anywhere.
away, right? That money could be washed away.
Yeah.
And in a in an environment which is held by an institution such as a life insurance company, and thank God for them, because I've through the years have seen the amazing work that they do. I mean, everybody can debate things about insurance companies, but I'm specifically talking about life insurance companies.
Hmm.
I'm not talking about
Car
property and
insurance.
casualty, right? There's a big difference.
Yes.
So to end this, I guess today, it's good to know who really is at the top level of the financial structure. It isn't a bank, because ultimately banks are at the mercy of the economic conditions that are thrown, around us, right? The whirlwind that's happening, economic conditions, Wall Street market conditions, interest rate conditions, environmental wars, everything else.
Right.
And we've seen them come and go. I mean, I've been through, numbers of banks failures, seen that happen.
Right.
But the top level here, at the pinnacle here, who really controls the ultimate wealth, right? And has the means to support the structures underneath them, which banks are one of those layers,
Hmm.
are the life insurance companies. So if
Right.
you do want to have faith in putting your money anywhere, um, that is really the only place to go. And their track record is 250 years plus. And
I
then
think a lot of people miss that. If you look back at the mortgage meltdown in 2008, um, a lot of people didn't understand why insurance companies were a part of that.
that's true.
And so, with that, I mean, we could go into, a hours long
I know.
conversation about all
Yeah,
of that.
oh, we go
But
on forever.
just to your point, though, banks failed and insurance companies were affected, right? So that just goes to show, just reinforce your point that insurance companies are that higher layer of the institution that, banks are working within. So, I think one of our sessions in the future probably needs to be about mutual whole life policies versus other types of policies that are promoted out there, index universal life, and the difference between these types of policies and term policies and all that. I think that's definitely going to have to be one of our other sessions, so that people can get at least a basic understanding of the difference of those, so that moving forward with this, it makes a little more sense.
Yes, because people don't really know, right? It's always what you
Right.
know, what you don't know is really what could
Correct.
hurt you. So yeah, we will get through this, and as we continue to read through it and open up more, subject matter, some of those things will come up. But I agree with you. So, um, have a great weekend. Um, Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again next week, or maybe even during the week sometime if you reach out to us. Anything else, Lowell? Bye for
Nope.
now.
We're good.
All
Have a
right.
good one.
Bye now.